I won't finish in 30 minutes before I go into the main issue itself. Now, on today's show, I'll talk about IR35 in the past, IR35 in the present, and IR35 in the future. I think that's a very, very easy way of trying to get through this in the next 25 minutes thereabouts. And the reason why I'm doing this video is because a lot of people have been asking me questions lately saying, so is going to happen, can you tell me more about it? IR35 is going to affect me, can you tell me more about it? So this video I'll literally just direct everyone that asks me questions about IR35 to this video, because I want to actually explain in full details. And just like any tax law, it changes all the time. So I'll go into it right now. So in 2000, IR35 legislation IR35 was legislated basically, and the purpose then was a lot of employees left their employment and they had their own limited company, and then all of a sudden the government noticed that the money that they were receiving reduced. But over the years, what they've done is they've adjusted this, they've brought this new rule, they've brought that rule, just to make sure that IR35 catch the people that they really want them to catch. But the main issue then was it was still left to the taxpayer to decide if she was or he was under IR35 or not. So that was the main, and I think that was the main issue. So in 2000, and before, the main purpose of the issue was to make sure that all individuals pay the right amount of tax. Okay, so if you are employed in the UK, you'd be paying national insurance, class 1 national insurance. Your employer will pay class 1 national insurance employee as well at 13.8. You either pay tax at 20%, at 40%, or 45%. But if you are not employed, all you then need to do is just to pay your corporation tax. The company would, you as an individual pay dividend tax. But however, I think what has happened over the years is a lot of people have claimed a lot of expenses, and therefore their bottom line is reduced, and therefore HMRC was not getting what they should be getting. So I'm just going to explain what IR35 is in the first place. Now, let's say Jane, that's the one I've used in my book as an example. So Jane, for example, now has a limited company, and Jane is working for a bank through a limited company. So there will be a bank that has employed Jane Limited to do some to provide some services. However, it's Jane that will be providing the services. Now, what HMRC needs to prove that as an IR35 has happened is, if there wasn't that Jane Limited, would Jane would have been employed by the limited company? So that was the main question that needed to be answered. But in the olden days, it was Jane herself, Jane Limited, and Jane that had to decide if they were IR35 under IR35 legislation or not. So basically, what then happened was, there are 4 key tests that needed to be taken to be sure that the person was under IR35. So the first one is control. Does a bank control Jane Limited? Do they tell Jane how to do her work? Is the control minimum, or they just say, okay, for example, there was a case in the court, was Lorraine Kelly, I think so, and then Lorraine was able to prove that she directs her show the way she wants to. Nobody told her how her show was being produced. Meanwhile, the other BBC presenter and every one of them, they literally have things in their ears and they've been told how to do their stuff. So those ones were not able to get away with it very easily. So another test is there mutual obligation? Does your employer expect you to turn up on Monday to Friday? And when you don't turn up on Friday, would they be happy that you've not turned up on Friday? So things like that. And can you send somebody else to do your work, basically? So if Jane was a nurse or was an accountant, or for example, let's say I was Jane, will I be able to send someone that's got the same technical knowledge as I am to do the work that I'm doing? And then I would then have to pay them, not a bank. So is it possible for is it possible for that person to be substituted, for Jane to be substituted? So the next one is Jane would literally have to pay for her insurance, not the A Bank. A Bank is the company that's employed now. So if these are just the 4 key tests, there's other tests that they've used, but in the last 2 years, that's the 4 major ones that they've used. Now, when I say pre now, before 2017, like I said, it was Jane that was in charge of doing this test, making sure that she was not under IR35. What happened in those all these years was the contractors made sure that their contract did not make them look as if they were under IR35. After all, they knew the conditions that they knew all the boxes they needed to tick so that they don't fall under IR35. So April 2017, a lot of people were affected. I have to say I was as well. And one of the ways I was affected was I had to literally explain to all my clients that was caught under IR35. I had to advise them, I had to help them to know the way forward, support them in doing whatever they needed to do, etc. So most accountants, I don't think would forget April 2017. So April 2017, IR35 was changed. And the major change here was, it was not up to Jane to do the test. It was up to A Bank to do the test. Now, most of all, and it was in the, and they rolled it onto the public sector. And the public sector included the hospitals, the police, the BBC, any public institution. And what all this public institution did, what they were supposed to do, was to do each test for all of their employees to make sure they're under IR35 or not under IR35. But what we saw happened was most of them just rolled all their staff under IR35 and told them, either you get yourself an umbrella company, you're under IR35. You're under IR35, you're under IR35. So a lot of people were forced into IR35. And since 2017, court has been bubbling for different cases of different people that have tried to say, I wasn't under IR35, my employer has dragged me under IR35, etc. So it was up to the hospital to make sure that the staff that they were employing was under IR35 or not. They had to do the test themselves. So that was in 2017, and we actually knew that it was going to come into private sector at some point, but we didn't know how it was going to happen or not happen. And that's why I'm doing this video, because the plan is April 2020, they're bringing IR35 into private sector. And like we always know, they leave everything last minute so that you don't have enough time to plan, and then everybody's panicking, and then your agency will just send you a letter in March, because that's what I saw the last time and then you don't have enough time to think about the options that you have. So this is just in advance to get ready. So under this new one now, so then presently, so that's the present issue now. So the present now is just the public sector that is under IR35. Now we're planning to bring it to private sector. Now, private sector now is not actually all the companies under private sector that will be affected. It will just be the medium and the large companies. Now, when I say the companies that are affected, it's not the contractor's company. It's the person, the main person that is employing the contractor. So that would be A Bank, let's say St. James Bank, that is employing Jane Limited, that Jane works for. That's the person we are assessing now. So if this top bank now is a large company or a medium-sized company, then that Jane Limited and Jane will be dragged into IR35. Basically, that's just saying that small companies will not be dragged into it. Now, small companies that are within a group of a large company will be affected as well. Now, the definition of a small company, I wrote it down somewhere, of a large company is a company that has a turnover of 10.2 million and has more than 50 employees, and their balance sheet date is not more than 5.1 million. You'd say that that's actually a lot, but the main issue here is they're trying to drag the other smaller company. And I think the ones that will really obviously be affected at the banks, definitely they will definitely have this kind of money, or people or small companies that are within a large group. So any of them that know that this is their base, this is what would happen. So what would then happen to IR35? So if a company is a medium or large company, what they would then need to do is all the contractors that are working for them, they would assess them and see if they fall under IR35. That's the right thing. That's the normal thing to do. And what we've heard is most of them are not planning to do this. They're just going to drag everyone into IR35. Now, then they would inform the agency if this contractor is working through the agency or Jane Limited itself that you are now under IR35 in the private sector because this is our asset base, this is our turnover. And then the agency then has the responsibility of making sure that the tax is deducted, the national insurance is deducted, and then the right amount of tax is paid. Now, as much as I would love to talk about what's going to happen to a bank, I'm really concerned about the contractors. What would happen to the contractors? Now, then what would happen to the contractors? Remember before now, they've had the limited company, they're running their own businesses, everything is going on fine. Obviously, they're getting loads of money because they have, even if they're paying tax, their income is not being taxed immediately. That was another issue as well. They literally have to wait for the whole year for them to prepare their accounts, deduct their expenses, and then go on from there to then pay corporation tax, if any at all. So now they're going to be taxed monthly immediately. So what happens to contractor, let's say Jane? Now, in the case of Jane, is either they get employed by a bank or St. James Bank, which is the company now that is cut by IR35. Now, what would happen then is they will turn to a proper employee. They'll have all the employees' benefits. They'll have all the things that other employees get, like annual leave, sick pay, or holiday pay, anything that all the other staff are given. They'll start enjoying it. What we've seen with the public sector is this amount will definitely be the lower amount. Another thing is then the employer would pay their employers' national insurance, which is 13.8% anyway. So even though the amount they're being paid is little, but the advice I gave most of people then that don't look at the bottom line. It's actually, to me personally, it's not such a bad deal. Because we all know that these contractors work a lot, and they literally do not get appreciated very well. So I don't know. To me, it is not a bad option. But if that's the route someone is planning to go to, you then need to worry about your limited company, because you can't just say, now I'm under IR35, I don't need to worry about it. You need to prepare your last account to the date that you've run the business as a limited company. So in your own case, it might be 31st of March because it's from 1st of April you're caught under IR35. So you need to submit a short return. You need to pay your tax. After the tax is paid, then you can close the limited company, except if you have other business that you're running through the limited company, or if you want to hold on to it. If you're holding on to it, you then need to keep running it every year. It's left to you. Depends on what you want or not. And then you then need to still submit your self-assessment return for 1920, because you're still a director that's received dividend, most likely, if not, maybe not, for 1920. So that's the first option. The second option that is very, very common is running this, being paid through the umbrella company. I actually don't mind umbrella company, don't get me wrong. So umbrella company is going to be like, probably, let's say me, the St. James Bank will pay me the full amount, and then I'll pay Jane the net amount and pay the remaining back to HMRC. Now, what is my own gain in this? I'll then charge you my own charges for doing that for you. That's the purpose of the umbrella company. Because what HMRC wants to be sure is that that money is being taxed before they give it to you, so that the money will be taxed before the contractor gets the money. So the purpose of the umbrella company is to do that. However, what I've seen in the last 2 years, which the very first time I saw it, I told a client, I said, One thing about IR35 that everybody keep forgetting is as much as the limited company is associated, they've actually made it a personal tax kind of issue. So if you're supposed to be under IR35 and you've not been treated as being under IR35, the consequence of that is you've underpaid tax as a taxpayer. As me, Ola, I've underpaid tax, and then HMRC can come back to me to get the tax. So what I saw in the last 2 years was, and I immediately, the first person said it, I was like, I think this is wrong. I don't advise you to go via this. With some umbrella company, the way they'll say, oh, we just take 2% of your money, we'll give you the remaining back, we'll say you're sole trader, or we'll put you under one tax avoider scheme. I didn't even know the details then, but it didn't sound right. And for me with tax, as soon as it's not sounding right, I need to see all the details before I can even agree with you. But what then happened 6 months down the line was these umbrella companies were reported to HMRC, and some of them, anyone that had that name of the umbrella company associated to them, they started getting letters from HMRC to say you have underpaid tax. So even the ones that have still not been caught yet, I don't know, I'm not going to say you're going to be caught, but when you're under IR35, you're under IR35. When someone is saying we'll get 2% of it and then you can do whatever you need to do, they're basically saying, I'm taking my 2%, do whatever you need to do yourself. And then in future, then you have to deal with it yourself. And most of these companies, these umbrella companies, they are abroad. You can't even get them wherever they are. So I would say be very careful. When you are under umbrella company, make sure they're actually running the payroll for you. Collect your pay slips. Looking through your pay slip and see what they've done. And be sure that the right amount of tax is applied for you. So that's the second, oh my God, I've got 5 minutes left. So that's the second option. So the third option is still running your limited company. In this case, then what St. James Limited or the agency will do is they'll register the company under PAYE, and then they will deduct tax and national insurance before paying the limited company. So what would happen is at the end of the day, the limited company will have so much money that has been paid to Jane, and then there will be loss in the limited company, because the only thing I will say is all this amount that was paid that has been taxed already by under HMR, under PAYE, because it's IR35, is not going to be taxed the second time under corporation tax. So definitely, most likely, you definitely have a loss. But another thing they give people that still owes onto their limited company, even when they are under IR35, is they allow them to have 5% expenses to pay for probably the accountants. They can still deduct travel expenses if it's related to work. They can still deduct pensions because it relates to their employment. So little things like that. So at the end of the day, it's still okay. But there will definitely, most likely, going to be a loss in the company. And one thing I discovered recently as well is, I think it was last year or 2 years ago, there was a change in the way corporation tax loss was dealt with. In the olden days, you literally have to use the loss on future trading profits. But if you're under IR35, most likely you're going to keep having losses every year. So probably you're just going to keep rolling the losses. However, there was a change in that rule that losses could actually be applied to other income that was earned by the limited company. So let's say rental income, let's say investment income, any other income that the company has earned. So by doing that, a lot of people have got plans that they will put investment income into their limited company, thereby saving tax via that. However, I would have to say one has to be very careful with that, because if your company then become non-trading company, to be a non-trading company, you would have to have more than 20% trading activities. And if that is the case, there will be a problem if you need to sell the company in future, entrepreneur relief, if you want to claim business property relief in future, in case you die. So you need to be very careful. So if I was going to go on that route, I'll make sure that I don't do more than 20%, so that I don't block other things for the company in the future. So I've actually got like 2 blogs, apart from the chapter in the book that explains very, very well. I'm telling you, I think this book, everyone should have it. I don't know, not just because I wrote it, but it's got like almost everything that could give you a light bulb moment. And that's the purpose of everything I do. I know it's not possible for me to have everyone as my client or anything. That's probably very, very impossible. But that excuse that everyone gives me all the time that I wasn't aware of it, it needs to stop, because it's not an excuse in law. That penalty that you're paying because you're not aware of it needs to stop as well. So my next 2 minutes, I'm just going to talk about the topics in this book. Maybe that would so I've got talking about allowances, national insurance, overpayment relief if you've paid too much tax, tax codes, benefit in kind, IR35 issues, trading, starting a new business, business incorporation, pensions and tax consequences, understanding VAT, making tax digital, when you want to register your business for the first time for payroll, claiming capital allowance, claiming business property reliefs if there have been errors on your returns, if you have rental income, if you're planning to register a charity, then if you want to move on from your business because you want to retire or do something new. So yeah, I'm hoping to still have one more before the end of the year of this laundry tax girl. However, in case work makes me not to, I'd like to say thank you so much to everyone that has been there for me this year, joining on the live show. Thank you. I'm very, very grateful.